The Chris Johnston Show.
Let's go!
Your number one destination for a behind-the-scenes look at the game of hockey.
Is this thing on?
Here's NHL insider Chris Johnston and host Julian McKenzie.
CJ, we will look ahead to Game 6 of the Leafs-Panthers second-round series, but still so much to delve into after Game 5. The Leafs, on their home rink, we don't need to sugarcoat it. They played terribly. Terribly. Considering the expectations that were thrust upon them, considering what was at stake for this team, understanding that the Florida Panthers were going to push back, and maybe it wasn't a complete surprise that they were going to make it 2-2. The fact that people looked at that Game 5 as a legacy game for players like Mitch Marner and Auston Matthews and John Tavares and William Nylander, and it'll go down as a legacy game for sure, but possibly in the negative. How did we get here? How would you sum up the Leafs' performance in Game 5?
Well, we should first put a content warning on this podcast because I have not slept much. So I'm going to be goofy and a little all over the place. So
I appreciate the warning.
We should have that as like a warning in general because it does happen on more than just this pod. But
right.
It was like 3 hours last night and I'm just feeling a little scattered. But I'll say this. I actually heard the broadcast in Canada describe it as a legacy game, and I was sitting beside Mark Masters in the press box, and I was like, this is not a legacy game. Like, it's a massive game. But a legacy game is what comes next, right? The legacy game is what is played Friday and potentially Sunday. Could be games, plural, if the Leafs manage to get to Game 7. You know, nobody remembers a Game 5, really. I mean, people are going to remember this is yet another time when Toronto had a chance to really push forward in a series to get to ground they've never covered, to start shedding the labels that have rightfully been placed upon them. But the legacy comes how you respond now after laying an absolute egg. I'm with you though. Like the way you've set this game up, Julian, like there's no, for me, how you lose actually does matter. I recognize it's the same thing in a series. It doesn't matter which order you win the games in. It doesn't matter if you only win 2-1 and you lose every game 7-0. Like all that is true, but come on. I mean, you're facing a Game 5 on home ice. You know, the Leafs, to their credit, I would say, down the stretch of the season, talk so much about wanting to win the Atlantic Division, wanting to give themselves home ice, wanting to increase their chances at basically playing deeper into the spring than they ever have as a group. And so part of that push in which they were successful in was surging by the Florida Panthers late in the season. It was guaranteeing that a game like the Game 5 they just had would be played at Scotiabank Arena, where they have had success this spring. And they had nothing in the first period. I mean, they got completely out-battled, out-executed. They were tentative. They got jumped upon by a team that has won a lot of playoff series. Eight rounds since 2023, and potentially could be 9 with one more win here. Would be a third straight trip to the Eastern Conference Final. So they're playing an absolute top-class opponent, of course. But under the circumstances, I mean, the Leafs should be trying to dictate the terms of the game, and they got fed, right? I mean, Craig Berube afterwards is saying they were standing around watching it happen rather than being the ones out there making it happen. And so for me, the legacy game is really the next one. And we know what the legacy is at this point. I mean, if anything, the legacy is 8/10 written. It's like the legacy is already, like the book is ready to go to the publisher at this point. But you need the ending, I guess. And I suppose if the ending's nice enough, then you're rewriting the whole book. But at this stage, that doesn't feel like what it is, right? I know you've just come through this process yourself as a author that will soon be published. I mean, basically the whole thing is there laid out, right? Like we've seen so many of these games. So often it is their top players not able to break through and have any offensive input on the game. What's most dispiriting, I would think, with the Game 5 loss to Florida is that the top players made a couple of the biggest errors that ended up in their own net. Because I was a little less hung up, I have to say, like yes, someone like Auston Matthews, Mitch Marner, you need those players to contribute offensively. But I think that storyline got going a little prematurely in this series. I was very much in the camp that they're playing a lot of hard minutes against great opponents. I mean, Florida has 3 top-tier lines. And so whether it was the Lundell line or the Barkov line with Reinhart, I mean, you're facing really difficult competition in this series. And until Game 5, the Leafs have been doing well with their top line out there. The Marner spin around pass to nowhere that ends up in the net. Even Matthews losing a puck battle behind his net on the first goal. The Barkov. I mean, those are the sorts of things that it's compounded by the fact that the Leafs had no juice themselves. So not only do you not have juice, your top line is now -2, and you're down 3-0 at the midway point of the game. And at that point, you're really in one. And so it was a wild night, man. I mean, I almost sometimes you get so like the inclination is to rush past the moment. Like, it's a playoff game. It's mid-May. This does not happen every year in Toronto or any other city for that matter. And you got fans throwing jerseys on the ice, and like the whole thing was a little surreal. Like, we've seen it before. It's not the first time, but it was a lot. It was weird. The building was totally empty by the midway point of the third period. I mean, just it's an embarrassment. Honestly, this franchise has endured them before, but that's an embarrassing performance, and it's an embarrassing outcome to have once again the whole hockey world looking in, going like, man, the Leafs are a tire fire. Like, my phone blew up last night. It's not because everyone likes me. It's because they realize you're at the game, and like the Leafs were. It's sort of like when you're what's that old saying? Like, you don't want to be the main character on hockey Twitter. They were like the main character on hockey Twitter again, and it wasn't very nice.
I mean, to be fair, you are very well liked. So, of course, a lot of people want your opinions on said game. That being said, you have it right. It was a tire fire. And I get it. The best players on this team, particularly Auston Matthews, who we spoke about in the last episode, found themselves in situations where their defense was their calling card. But when you're in a situation where Nicholas Robertson has more goals in the second round than that player does, the highest paid player in the National Hockey League, that's inexcusable. That's unacceptable. Like, Auston Matthews has to bring it at some point. And for Mitch Marner, that giveaway, it's bad. I'm speaking objectively here. Like, I can sense the emotion. It's bad.
I think that giveaway to me is worse than not scoring in a given game, though. Is all I
agree with you with that. I agree with you with that.
Like, my point is, a lot of good things can be happening when you're on the ice. You don't let one in the other end, and maybe you just haven't broken through yet. And I do think there was a lot of that in this series. Like, that's where I was a little bit more forgiving for those players. I was not here ever saying they can't just never score again and it's going to be fine. Mm-hmm. But they weren't giving up a lot when they were on the ice. But that is a giveaway. I mean, Ray Ferraro on the ESPN broadcast called it a dreadful decision. And Ray doesn't use hyperbole. Like literally spinning, not looking, and throwing a pass into the middle of the ice. I mean, the playoffs are about execution. They're about puck management. They're about winning puck battles, right? Like, it's not always pretty, right? There's no Mozarts out there. This is brutalist, paint by numbers, is what the playoff hockey is. And just to get to this game, you just wonder, how can such a skilled player make that decision? And look, everyone makes mistakes, including me. I've written lots of crappy stories in this playoffs. Like, I get it. But I guess my point is you keep seeing these trends again and again and again from the same guys. And I think we would all have our heads in the sand if we weren't talking about the past in the context of that game, right? Like, that's where it gets a little funny. And even Craig Berube, who has been so steady, like, he seemed a little rattled after that game. I just mean in terms of like he's diagnosed the problem. Like, he's talking about overthinking and just having to focus on small parts of the game. But I don't know if he's found the solution. I mean, I don't know if he has the remedy. He knows what the illness is, but I don't know in this short a window if he can remedy the situation. And that's, I guess, why we're going to get dragged back to watch it again, right? Like, it's fat. Like, this is human drama. It's sporting drama. What happens in Game 6? Because there is, and I'm not going to be too optimistic on this podcast because I'm realistic, but I will say there is a fantastic opportunity for all these guys to slam it in everyone's face if they race out of this alleyway somehow and win these next two games. But I mean, my goodness, they put themselves in a terrible spot from being ahead 2-0 in the series, ahead 3-1 in Game 3, to be where they sit today. It just feels like you guys can't get out of your own way.
I had a lot more optimism for this Leafs team at the beginning of the series. You heard me on the show say it felt real for them at 2-0. And to see Florida not only push back, which again, not a complete surprise, but to get to this point where they rip the spirit out of this team. It's one thing to see fans feel embarrassed. I think of Tic Tac Tomar yesterday, who straight up said, this is like the most embarrassed he's felt as a fan. We've all seen how Steve Dangle feels about this. I'm very curious about how the players really feel about all that. They're going to give us the platitudes and whatever quotes they'll give us after a game. I say us as in media and fans and whatever. But like, how do they really feel knowing, again, they have to face off against elimination? Again, everyone is saying, here we go again. It's the Toronto Maple Leafs. They're about to crap the bed again. Like, you've gone through how many years of this? Almost a decade of this. Like, how I'm really curious to know how they really feel.
Well, I think the most important thing is like, and this is like the unanswerable question. We're not on the team. We're in the dressing room for 10 mandated minutes a day or 20 minutes a day. Like, it's like, you don't know. But like, I don't know how they could feel like they can win, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know how they could sit there as they're putting on their equipment on Friday night and feel confident. Like, I know this person next to me and this person next to me and this person next to me is going to execute, is going to come out, is going to play like what this moment deserves. Because so often it hasn't happened, right? And I should say, because we're pretty deep into this, I don't think it's like a caring issue. Like, I really want to like be clear about this. I don't think it's because these guys aren't in the best shape they could be in, aren't making every sacrifice in their life to want to deliver in this moment, don't care about the sweater, the city, the organization, all those things. Like, I actually believe, because you see the emotion and you see how frustrated they are. I mean, maybe it's almost, sometimes in the big stage, it might be they care too much, right? Like, they become result focused rather than process focused, whatever it is. But I think that we're long past the point of like, I mean, really, there's reason to doubt whether they can actually do it, right? Like, that's at the end of the day, that's all we're talking about. Can you go out and play something that looks like your best game? Can you find a way through a night maybe where it isn't your best game? Like, lots of good teams win lots of games where they're not amazing, where they're outplayed in the playoffs, but they get a great goaltending performance or an unlikely offensive contributor steps up. They block a lot of shots. I mean, things that actually we saw the Leafs doing earlier in the series, when they were playing quite well. To me, the concern is the losses, it's 3 in a row now, have gotten quite a bit worse, right? From game 3 where they played well. I mean, it's not good you blow a lead, but they fought back in that game. They got to overtime. They had legitimate chances to win the game in overtime. They lose on a kind of a crazy bounce, the Brad Marchand goal. It happens, right? Game 4, not a lot of offensive pressure. They battled hard in the game. Like, the effort was there, but they just weren't creating anything. And then game 5 is a debacle. So you just wonder, like, where do they go from here? And that's when I'm talking about belief in the room broadly, like, that's where I'm like, I don't know where it would come from. Like, I feel like it's like when I get up to golf, Julian, I'm not a very good golfer. I stand on the tee and I put my ball on the ground and I'm holding my driver and I'm thinking, like, I hope this finds a fairway, right? I hope this goes okay, because I'm never really sure, like, where I'm going to hit it, right? That's a little bit what I feel like where the Leafs must be mentally, as much as they're trying not to be. They're hoping rather than dictating, like, they don't know either. Like, that's the point. We're the media here. The fans are all thinking like what's going to happen in game 6? Is it going to be another spectacular failure? Are they going to rise up? I think the problem is I don't believe they even truly know. Like, I think that there's some indecision in their own minds or some uncertainty about that. And that is the problem, right? I think you get to a team like Florida and look at Florida's on the polar end of where Toronto is. They've done nothing but win for a couple of years. They've got all these battle-hardened and proven players. They've added Brad Marchand, who's one of those competitive guys that's had a ton of success over his career. Those guys know what it takes to get it done. They know how they're going to play in that game. They don't know what the result will be, but they know that the parts that they can control, that they are going to be dialed in. The Leafs can't know that because they just have not done it under the brightest lights so often. And so I don't think almost anything else matters. Like, I don't think the noise matters. I don't think that it matters that a fan threw a jersey on the ice. I don't think it matters what Chris Johnston says into his microphone or writes on the page at The Athletic. Like, I think that all of that stuff is downstream. Like, the truth is the fundamental thing here is they don't even know if they can do it. And frankly, they've never done it. And so the outcome that's always there when you're recording these podcasts is like, well, maybe in these next 72 hours they're going to jam it down my throat, and they're going to have 2 awesome games, and they're going to be at a level they haven't been at. They're going to be in the conference final, and then look at all the platitudes will come their way if they get that done on that stage. I mean, this is what it is. Like, there's only 7 teams as a recording right now still live in the league. So there's 25 teams that are onto their vacations. They're at the World Hockey Championship. They're golfing. They're fishing. They're at their cottage. They're touring around Turkey. I don't know. Like there's a lot of people associated with NHL teams that aren't working too hard right now. And the Leafs have they have a big game to prepare for and a lot of work to prepare for. So anyway, I'm all over the place. As I told you, not enough sleep, pal. So I'm going to peter out here rather than try to finish on a high note.
Dude, this is like, I'm hearing you sleep deprived. This is prime Chris Johnston. Like, you are just speaking from you're speaking from the cuff off the cuff right here. Like, this is perfect. Because here, when you were describing, I realized this should be a little bit more structured and I should be asking a little bit more questions, but I'm just going to continue to go with the flow here. Here's the thing. Even if the Leafs, they have a meeting within themselves, guys in the room say, you know what, man, let's just play like we've got nothing to lose. The Leafs have endured so much failure to this point that it's going to take so much for segments of this fan base to truly believe. And what I mean by that is, let's say the Leafs win Game 6. They win Game 6 on the road. They find a way to do it against Florida. Like, even before we got to recording today, they just seeing people say, oh, this is how this is going to go. They're going to find a way to win Game 6 and then get to Game 7 for a soul-crushing defeat. If this game goes to a Game 7 back at Scotiabank Arena, if I'm in the building, I'm not expecting fans to be at full voice. I'm expecting fans to be super nervous because, again, with all the failure, with all the pain they've endured over the last how many years, you're not going into that building feeling super confident. You're not going into that building being like, man, they can actually do this. You're going into this thinking, damn, how are they going to kick me in the nuts now? Because they've done that before. They've done that in almost how many years, dating back to whichever year to now. You can go through the timeline if you want to. Like, like the Leafs, in a weird way, are going up this hill where literally everyone is against them. It's the hockey world against them. Their own fans are against them. Sections of media, if you want to say they're against them. Like, it's one thing for them to not have that belief. Even if they channel that belief, there's just so much writing against them where they could easily get hit by a tidal wave of that before they step on the ice, whether it's for Game 6 or Game 7. Like, this is a tough challenge for them.
Yeah, but this is what, for this franchise, this is what they're eventually going to have to overcome to win one day anyway. Mm-hmm. Whether it's this group of Leafs or not, whether, like, if everything gets blown to smithereens and they rebuild and whatever, in 20 years, they're back in this spot. Like, eventually the same narratives will be there, the same talking points, the same doubt will be, it'll be even more like crystallized in the fan base. Steve Dangle will be 62 yelling into a camera with a hoarse voice. I mean, I love you, Steve. I'm just saying, at some point in time, obviously the franchise wants to add another cup banner to the building. And so it gets harder and harder every year by some degree, because it's hard enough just the hockey part, right? Playoff hockey is hard by definition. The games are difficult. You're trying to control things that aren't easy to control on the ice. And then on top of all that, like, a lot of things don't go your way. Injuries pop up, whatever. Like, it's just hard to win straight up. But I think it's even harder when you're existing in this kind of world where this is being brought up. That being said, look at the Edmonton Oilers of last year. And I know it's a weird example to bring up, but they used all that as a galvanizing force, right? They were down 0-3. And, you know, I'd love to go back and read all the stories written when the night they lost Game 3. I'm sure a lot of it was just about, you know, the quick exit and how they were doomed. And they stretched that series another 10 days, you know, and they really seized on the idea of, like, let's make them go back, you know, bring them back to Alberta and all this stuff and they got a lot of momentum out of, basically, they fed off the doubt. I think it's safe to say we haven't seen the Leafs do that just yet, but I mean, it's such a short window. Like, I'd love to know what they're doing differently in the team environment. I'm sure there won't be saying too much. I mean, they're already not really telling us too much. That does sound like after Game 5, there was a pretty emotional talk amongst the players, and I think a lot of the messaging was around basically shrinking your mind, like don't focus on outcomes, don't focus even on what's the score at the end of the first period of Game 6, like. Literally try to just be in the moment and take it shift by shift, which I actually think is a productive way to live your life. The more you can do that, whatever you're doing, you're likely to have success. And it's a little bit cliche, but I think there's a reason for that is if you could actually free yourself of thinking about what's going to happen and you just go out there and make it happen, you probably have a better chance of success. If you leave it out there, like you were saying earlier, like if they can just play like everything's on the line. I mean, I don't know why they wouldn't do that. I'm left with this thought, though, like we've wasted years upon years upon years here. Just thinking of how many times I've written, like, this has to be the end of this core. I mean, now we're writing it again, and it really feels real. Like, I can't imagine if they lose that it's just going to be back kind of in the same way at the top of the lineup, the top of the roster, and the pay scale. But, man, it's... There's no show in hockey quite like this. I mean, it's almost like theater. The way the Leafs lose is almost the point. Like they were making that point today. Like, oh, if we had a lost 2-1, I mean, we're in the same spot. It's like, yes, but I actually don't think everyone would be as hysterical. Like, I'm not saying the fan base would be excited, but if you played your hearts out and you lost a tough game, like people don't freak out about that. What they freak out about is you're losing 6-0 on home ice until a minute 6 left in the game. I mean, it was almost the first time the Leafs were shut out in back-to-back games in the playoffs since the 1994 conference final. Sergei Bobrovsky has never thrown 2 straight shutout during his playoff career and almost got it done. Like, you're not just losing. Like, it was capitulation, right? It was total and utter. Like, they didn't even get off the start line in that game. They got, and again, I can live a little bit with your top guys not scoring every night if they are taking care of the puck, and they didn't take care of the puck lots last night. And so they literally had no chance under those circumstances. I mean, you're just hoping for a goal from like a Bobby McMahon at this point, or, Nick Robertson ended up scoring one, as you mentioned, but like you're hoping for some of but like you're not counting on those third or fourth liners on your team to outscore two mistakes from your top line. Like, your top line has to make that mistake. I love Chris Tanev after the game said, like, I take responsibility for this. I was a minus player tonight. And if I'm a minus player, we're not going to win too often. And it's because he's on their top pairing, right? Like, it's just actual reality. Like, if you play on the top line and you finish -2 in a game, the odds of your team winning a playoff game are very long. It's not impossible, but it's very long because you can't expect the rest of the roster to outscore the other team by 2 or 3 goals. You can't be -2 in games of this magnitude. Like, it's just a fact. And if you are, then the reaction is going to be what it was. And it's only going to get worse here if they don't find a way to win Game 6.
Can we spend a few more minutes on Mitch Marner? You mentioned this is theater. And if this team is theater, then arguably its most tragic character is Mitch Marner. When you look at the team's biggest failures over the last handful of years, particularly in these spots, he is a character you focus on for how he essentially shrinks in these moments. We already spoke about the giveaway that leads to the Jesper Bachqvist goal. We have to have a conversation about how this series, and especially if it ends in the way that I think it might end at this point, we have to talk about how this impacts him as a Leaf, as a potential free agent, what could happen for him going forward. Because it's ironic, you're saying at the beginning of the episode, not too many people might remember what happens in a Game 5. If the Leafs lose Game 6 or even Game 7, the enduring moment for many people on Mitch Marner will be that giveaway in a Game 5.
Well, how about this? That might be his last time playing on the Scotiabank Arena ice as a member of the Maple Leafs. I mean, that alone tells you something. Hometown guy that frankly, when he arrived, boundless energy, enthusiasm, imagination on the ice. You walk around the streets of the city, even on a day like today, even after a loss like that, see a lot of Marner jerseys. There's, he has a lot of fans, and justifiably so. And, but he's maybe going out in this manner in Toronto. I'm working on the assumption that he's unlikely to be back with the Leafs no matter what happens in this playoffs. He had ample opportunity to negotiate and sign an extension with the organization. We've been over that around the trade deadline, but it didn't happen. He refused to entertain management's desire to have him waive his no movement clause at that time. Everything is lined up with Mitch Marner walking to free agency, which, look at your watch. We're less than 7 weeks from July 1st. And so when this Leaf season ends, I assume that will be the last game we see him as a Leaf. Now, that there's still room for that to change, but all indications have been that this guy wants to test free agency. He wants to see what's out there for him. He wants the biggest buck. It's his right. There's nothing wrong with that. Quite honestly, from a business standpoint, that makes sense. But, if you're the Leafs, it's a pretty bitter pill if this is how it all goes down. And look, I'm not going to finger point. A player earns a no movement clause in his contract. The Leafs were late making a decision on Marner. They waited until after he had this no movement clause and wouldn't negotiate with him before they tried to trade him. There was windows. You go back a couple of years after 2023, the loss to Florida. They had a window there to look at trading someone like Marner, and instead they fired Kyle Dubas and made phone calls to all those top guys right away and said, "We're not trading you, don't worry," and then hired Brad Treliving a month before those clauses kicked in, and basically with the mandate, you're not moving them, right? Brendan Shanahan has been the protector in chief of this team. He's been the one all along who said, we're going to win with these guys. And look, they still could. Their season is still alive. That's the funny part here. But, I do think we're going to see an ending with Mitch Marner more than likely if especially if it goes down this way. I mean, part of the reason that I've consistently heard he wants to move on is he just, it's a hard place for him to live. And I actually get that. There are so many easier markets to play in a league than on the Leafs under these circumstances. Mitch lives in the Toronto area year round. Obviously, all his friends and family are dialed into the Leafs. They're dialed into what everybody's saying and writing and thinking. And, I don't think that there's a lot of break for someone in that position. And he's taken a lot of the criticism during their repeated playoff disappointments. Now, he's had a big hand in it, and he's been one of their top players. And I'm not even going to sit here and say the criticism is all unjustified. It's just, I think that's taken a toll on him, and he's got an opportunity here with the salary cap going up and a lot of teams out there with money to spend where he can go look at the market. And that's really, honestly, it's what I expect him to do when the season ends. To me, the bigger surprise would be him re-signing in Toronto. I don't even know what percentage to put on it, because it's not a 0% chance, of course, he signs with the Leafs still. But I think it's certainly less than 50% chance he's back in Toronto. I think he's going to be the top free agent, and it'll be interesting to see if the season just ends the next night, how teams view this whole playoff runs in Toronto. He's going to get paid. Don't get me wrong. He's been a top class player for a long time, but there must be at least some concern in the marketplace about what you see with him on this stage. So, this playoff, the one we're watching right now today, I do not put exclusively at his feet. I think, him and Auston Matthews both deserve a fair amount of the most pointed criticism for just not offensively being able to do enough. And then defensively in the biggest game of the year, they're each kind of, for me, get a mark against for a big goal against, and at a time when they don't score and they haven't been scoring. So, I think it should be shared responsibility in this instance, but man, stakes are high, brother.
Absolutely. As we look ahead to Game 6, we should spend some time on the fact that the Florida Panthers have turned this series around for the better. Yes, they've had bounces go their way, but they've looked better. Sergei Bobrovsky certainly has looked a lot better, and now they've put themselves in a position to clinch the series in their own home rink. What have you seen out of the Panthers in the way that they've played in these last 3 games that has put them in this position?
Just a veteran team that knows what it takes. I was in their dressing room the night they lost Game 2 to go home down 2-0, and there just was no sense of panic there. Remember Brad Marchand saying, these series can switch on a dime, flip on a dime. And he couldn't have been more right about what happened next. Obviously, he had a big game 3 himself, scored the overtime goal, helped get the ball rolling in that direction. But let's take the Jesper Boquist thing. Evan Rodriguez gets knocked out, gets hit, interference play, doesn't have the puck in game 4. He's unavailable to play game 5. They bring Jesper Boquist in from the bullpen. The guy has 1 assist in 21 career Stanley Cup playoff games before that. They put him on the top line left wing position because that's what made the most sense. Obviously, you didn't want to disrupt what they had working with Bennett and Tkachuk. You didn't want to disrupt that third line with Lundell, Luostarinen, and Marchand because it's been going so well. And so you insert the guy, you take him from the press box, you put him beside Barkov, and then he scores a goal in the game. Like, look at the other goal scorers. You got Mikkola, right? Like Aaron Ekblad, obviously an offensive player, but you're not counting on goals from him. He gets his second of the playoffs. Like like you talk about the epitome of a team. Look at the Panthers scoring list. I didn't update it this morning, but yesterday entering the game, they had 8 players on 8 points. And that was like leading their team in scoring the playoffs. I mean, they are just a deep team. I really believe because they've won, they're not worried about who gets the credit or any of those things. Like I just think they play the game the right way, and they can even bring a guy out of the press box, put him on the top line, and he scores a huge goal. Like, I mean, that's the kind of culture. That's like what every team's trying to build, or every franchise. I think it's one thing to say it. It's another thing to do it. And they've done it. So what I've seen from them in this series is they didn't panic when they got off to a slow start. They trusted in who they were and what they are in their process. They got incrementally better in the games. They relied on the fact that Sergei Bobrovsky was not going to be as porous as he was, especially in the first 3 games of the series. They got to their game, especially in game 4, and just didn't give the Leafs much. You know, they did take a few penalties in that game. They took their penalty kill. Like, their penalty kill was big there. That there could have been swing moments in that game if the Leafs had a power play goal. And then game 5, they just came out and won every puck battle and detailed the Leafs to death. Like, you watch the Ekblad goal. Like, that was the first goal of the night. Yeah. They had the puck in the zone for 20, 25 seconds. It's bouncing everywhere, but the Panthers are like on every puck battle. Eventually comes to Ekblad and he roofs one under the bar. But it just was like the Leafs couldn't get out of their own way on that sequence. And you think of the stakes of that moment. It's look, I think at a certain point I tend to focus. I'm writing primarily on the Leafs in the series. Like, I'm focused a lot of what this means through their lens. And so I probably am guilty at times of not talking enough about how great Florida's been. But I mean, that's a special team that has won as much as they've won, that's inserting, and with respect to Jesper Boquist, was his first ever Stanley Cup playoff goal. Like, it would be akin to the Leafs, bringing Nick Robertson and putting him in the Matthew Nye spot beside Matthews. Like, they'd almost never do it, I don't think. And I'm not certainly sitting here advocating for that to be the change. It's just the Panthers are a team, and they're playing as a team, and they're winning as a team. And that's a tough thing to beat when you get into playoff hockey. Okay. Any final thoughts looking ahead to game 6 that you'd like to spew about the Leafs or Panthers that I didn't ask you? I know we've spent most of this podcast. I don't want to lose out on time for other stuff, but one final thought if you have. No, nothing left to be said, man. It's just what happens on the ice. Like, I'm at the point, I'm not about the quotes at this stage or the big speeches. It's more about who can get the job done. What do we see? I'm actually just fascinated to see how the Leafs play. I'm less actually concerned with who wins the game or not. I'm more like, how do they bounce back from that? Because they had to be as embarrassed as I said it off the top. Do they have some kind of pushback, or are they just going to be like, yeah, okay, it's basically time to go golfing and let's get this over with? All right. We'll have to wait and see for our early episode next week on whether we'll be talking about a fantastic Leafs comeback or the end of their season. CJ, we know you got to go because you're flying out to Florida. So with respect to all the other things we got to talk about in the hockey world, we're going to get to stick taps and we'll try to break it all down on next week's episode. Do you have a stick tap for this week? Oh, I'm going to stick tap the Minnesota Frost. I like it. I love that. Defending Walter Cup champions on their way back to the final, got through the Toronto Scepters. I didn't get a chance to watch the clinching game because it was played alongside the Leafs Panthers game 5. But we don't talk a lot of PWHL on here, but I just figured I would use my stick tap to shout out the Frost, which have a chance to go back-to-back to start that new league.
In taking inspiration from yourself, I'll give some love to the Ottawa Charge fans who were chanting, "You picked us to the Montréal Victoire." Considering how the playoffs go, if you're a top seed, you pick your opponent in the first round. Ottawa has a lead on Montreal right now in their series. We could be looking at a Minnesota-Ottawa final if things shake out the way that they could shake out. Really cool to see the P-Dub playoffs go the way that they've been going. And yeah, you're right. We don't talk enough about the P-Dub on the show. Maybe we should change that. But really cool to see these playoffs go. I'll also give a stick tap to my dad. It was his birthday on Wednesday. So
happy birthday.
Yeah.
Love that bit of heart.
Yeah.
And here I thought you were going to stick tap like Ken Holland for getting the Kings GM gig, or Adam Foote for the promotion in Vancouver, Rick Tocchet for landing on his feet in Philadelphia. All that stuff we didn't get to, but we got another show coming in a couple days.
Oh, yeah. And look, there are still vacancies abound in the National Hockey League world, and CJ will break it all down. We'll all break it all down here on the Chris Johnston Show. Get your questions in now for the next Ask CJ, whether you're on Discord or on X or on Blue Sky. Or I don't know, maybe you're one of those people who are really nice to CJ and you text him. You could do that too. Anyway, we'll be back next week with a brand new episode of The Chris Johnston Show, and we'll continue to talk about the Stanley Cup playoffs. CJ, great as always.
Thanks, bud.
The Chris Johnston Show. Follow Chris on Twitter @ReporterChris and follow Julian @JKA McKenzie.
The Chris Johnston Show.